Many of us modern mamas are drawn to the old-fashioned way of raising a family. Not that past generations necessarily did everything right, but they did lay a blueprint for how moms can instinctively take care of their children. Today, we've become reliant on the internet, so there isn't much room for the innate ability to mother. Children need our full presence. They need attunement, and ultimately, they need a confident mama like you.
Welcome to the Slowish Parenting Podcast. I'm your host, Alexis. I'm a mama to two little girls and a parenting coach. I help moms who are burned out, tired, and stressed feel happy and confident so they can enjoy a little more ease in their daily life. If you want to unlearn parenting and awaken your innate design, then you're in the right place. Alrighty, let's get into today's episode. Hello, you guys. Welcome back to another episode. Today, I am talking about a topic that has become very popular here on my channel, which is this idea of old-fashioned motherhood, old-fashioned parenting. And what actually started this was I had done a poll over on my community page on YouTube. If you are not subscribed on YouTube, definitely subscribe, because this is where you can get involved in helping me to pick things like podcast episodes. And it was early December, I had asked what you guys wanted to see, and this was one of the things that was chosen. And I was kind of surprised because I was like, old-fashioned parenting, what do I know about old-fashioned parenting? So in that first episode, which if you want to watch, I'll make sure to link it for you, but I actually called my grandfather and I asked him some questions about what it was like to grow up. He was born in the 40s, so 40s and 50s. What was that like for him? And so if you're interested in kind of hearing more about those habits and things that I gained from that conversation with my grandfather, you can head over to that episode. But then more recently, I did another episode on what I believe that old-fashioned stay-at-home moms did better. I'll link that one as well, but that one was much more on our motherly intuition, which I will touch a little bit on in here today. But these two episodes just hit home for so many people. And I think I know why. I think that so many of us feel out of touch with ourselves, with how things were intended to be. And although there are things like social media and even just like the advances in like having a robot vacuum, which I love, by the way. I love my little Roomba thing. iVacuum, whatever it's called. iRobot. He makes my life so much easier. His name's Buddy. But I find that sometimes we become so reliant on these things that we've forgotten that there was a whole time before where we didn't use this stuff, where we didn't have these abilities. And, even in the video I did recently about old-fashioned parenting with the motherly intuition, like I talked about Google and how Google can be an awesome resource and it can be a friend, but it can also be an enemy. It can cause so much spiraling and disconnection from our innate abilities, because that's how we survived up until this point. Our survival mechanism was intuition, and mothers were given this extra special gift to have a highly sensitive awareness to our intuition, that gut instinct. And so I believe that we've just gotten so far away from that. So today I'm broadening my horizons a little bit, and I'm really talking about what we are doing wrong today as moms, that I think the older generations got better. I think that they did these things a lot better. And I want you to know, by no means, if you are doing any of these things and you wholeheartedly believe in them, like, awesome, good for you. Please don't leave me a negative comment that is going to make me feel grumpy. Seriously, like, just skip along. But anyway, I find that it's like, if we can identify these areas where we could be doing better, where we could be giving more of ourselves as mothers, I really believe that we will see a huge difference, not only in ourselves, right? We will feel more free, and I love the word vibrant. Like, we will just feel more full of life. But we are also going to see that in our kids because they are mirroring our energetics, which is something that I've known for the last year and a half, but for some reason in this last couple of months, I heard it again, and it's just making sense, and I'm seeing it so clear. So let's go through some of the things. I think I have about 9 things. I don't ever like titling these anymore with the number because I'm so worried that I'm going to be off in my numbering, because usually I am. Either like I add things or I forget something. So anyway, we're going to try to stick with these today. But the first thing that I think we aren't doing well today is our motherly intuition. I mentioned this earlier. I also did that entire podcast episode on motherly intuition and how to gain that. But I just want to say a couple of little things here that will be way more expansive in that episode. But I think that today we have relied on all of the experts in all of the fields, you know, the nutrition field, the medical field, the sleep training field, the parenting, like how to parent, like gentle parenting or traditional parenting or authoritative parenting or whatever parenting style you, I guess, are drawn to. But there's an expert in the field for everything: birth, postpartum. I mean, you name it, there is an expert. And I think so often we can feel so little and so small. We can feel like what does my opinion matter? I don't know anything. I don't know science. I don't know research. I don't know. I haven't done all the research. And so what we'll do is we'll go to these influencers and we'll go to these people that feel real and like they've done the research, because we've formed a connection over social media with them, and we'll take on their ideologies. And so I want to be really careful that we aren't doing that, right? Like, let's be sure that this actually fits in with our beliefs. This actually fits in with our body. And so if you're kind of like, I have no idea what this would even look like, this is what I do with coaching. You know, I help moms to really rediscover that innate ability to trust themselves, to come into who they were meant to be and made to be, because it's just covered up. It's still there. It's just covered up. And so kind of breaking through and out of all of these, barriers that are up around us. And so, yeah, that is like, I'm super passionate about that when it comes to coaching. It's probably one of my favorite things to coach, because you just start to see a woman blossom and just step into who she was made to be, and just you can see her whole face come alive, and you're just like, oh my gosh, like you're beautiful. Like, you were already beautiful, but now, like, not only are you like beautiful on the inside, but you're like glowing on the outside, because you're so confident and you're so able to make decisions that just align with who you are and where you're at in life. So I think that today we need to do this a whole lot better, and we need to understand how to get back to our innate design, which was trusting our motherly intuition. So the next thing is going to be, we've lost the importance of childhood. I have found in my own journey that I have pushed my kids along in their milestones so that way they were ahead, because I felt that other parents around me who were also raising children at the same age were, and not in a bad way, but they were bragging about, oh, my kid's doing this now and my kid's doing this now. And I felt behind. My first was 4 weeks early. So naturally, she was going to always be at a minimum 4 weeks behind, but probably even a little more because she was in the NICU, you know? But I didn't know that as a very young mom. I was 24 when I became a mama. Which is not young, but I mean, it's still on the younger side, right? And I had no ability to just trust that she was going to grow and mature at her own rate. Now, I want you to know here, and I'll share more about this later, I'm not saying that developmental milestones aren't important to know and to keep in the back of our mind. But I think that we have to be understanding that there is definitely a window here of tolerance. There's like, it's not like at 6 months they're going to crawl. Like, it's kind of a little bit more leeway than that. They could crawl as early as 4 months, and they could, which actually that would never happen. They can crawl as early as like 6 months, and they could like crawl as early as like 9 months, and really having this window, and then like saying, okay, anything outside of that is something that should raise a red flag for me. But I think that we can get so caught up in this exact piece of like their milestone that they're not hitting. And then as they get older, I know for myself, when my daughter started preschool, we started homeschooling. And at first I wanted to be the homeschool parent that everything was aligned. We had all the schedules, all the things laid out. We did things every single day, kept her, ahead of schedule. And now I'm realizing that that was not what I wanted to do. And so when I realized that, probably about 3 weeks in, my daughter just started learning and blossoming, because I was no longer making homeschool like a required time. It was like this beautiful ebb and flow of her natural interest in learning. And so now how we do homeschool is I just ask her in the morning, hey, are you interested in doing homeschool today? And most of the time she says yes. And I kind of let her pick the subjects that she wants to do that day. She is a 4-year-old, and a 4-year-old, like she's almost 4.5 now. But when we started kindergarten, she was just maybe 2 months after her 4th birthday. And I was really nervous about starting it because I didn't want her to get too far ahead. I didn't want her childhood to be, what's the word I'm looking for here? Like, I didn't want it to be taken away from her by learning. But we've been literally spending maybe 40 minutes a day, and sometimes going a week without doing homeschool. But this kid is learning more than I think I ever learned at that age. And so I just imagine as she grows and she gets these little, weeks or even, maybe a moment in her day of wanting to learn, and that interest and fostering that and following that, I think is so special. And I love the Danish, as many of you know, I love the Danish way of doing things, because they are like not worried about the academic side of things. And I think here we can get so concerned about the milestones and the academics and what our kid isn't doing. And it can make us forget that, them just being a child, just playing, using their imagination, crafting, being creative is being a child. Being just in the environment, a safe, loving, calm, peaceful environment with two parents who just have a foundation of love is going to give them the best opportunity. Now, before, I just realized I'm probably going to upset some people. I don't like upsetting people. No, I want you to know that if you are a single mama, I want you to know that there is so much you can do to nurture this in your home. I want you to know that if you are doing the whole parenting thing alone, for whatever your circumstances are, there is so much you can do to foster that without having a spouse there helping you through the trenches of it all and giving that foundation. But in an ideal situation, we have a husband and a wife together, having a foundation of love, confidence, safety, peace, trust, and that is where our children grow from. So yeah, I think that we need to get back to what childhood was intended. There's so many awesome resources out there. If I think of any while I'm editing this, I will leave them in the description below. So the next thing is, I think that we today spend our free time scrolling, and I think that it is causing us to feel depleted, drained, tired, worn out. And I find so many moms saying, I don't have time for self-care. And I find in my own life, I can spend way too much time scrolling because, I'm in the car and I have 5 minutes while I'm waiting for groceries. when I could just bring my book with me and I could sit and read 2-3 pages of my book. I could, go outside with my kids, and when they are playing really well together, I could take my Bible out and read, a chapter in my Bible. Like, I can find time to journal. I can do all these things when I'm not scrolling. But I think that we think that, well, I've only got a minute or a couple seconds, so I'll just scroll. Well, what we don't realize is that turns into 2, 3, 4, 10, 20 minutes. And before you know it, we could have read almost an entire book. No, but it's like, can we take this time and utilize it for good? Make it self-growth, make it just pouring into yourself, giving yourself just a minute to breathe with nothing. Like nothing. You have nothing to do with your hands. Like that, for me, at the very beginning of my slow living journey, was scary and weird, and it felt uncomfortable. But the more I do it, the more I crave it and I want it because it feels so good. So if you're struggling with scrolling, I encourage you just to start with 5 minutes. Like the very first time you notice, of the day, like I'm just going to do it one time a day right now. When I start to scroll, I'm going to say, oh, nope, I'm going to read a little bit of a new book. Get yourself something new, a magazine. We really love cookbooks in our family. And so me and the girls will sit down and we'll, start looking through cookbooks. Like find something that you can replace the scrolling with that's actually going to nourish your soul, and do those things in place of something that is just adding nothing to your life except for feeling probably pretty terrible about yourself and your situation and where things are and all of that. So the next thing that I think that we are getting wrong today is focusing in on our own success. Now, I hesitated on this one because I'm doing a YouTube channel, and clearly I want success, right? I want to be successful, but I have struggled, and sometimes I do struggle. It's been good in this past season, but in the past, I've really struggled with wanting something to be successful. And, I haven't really dug into the why behind why I want something to be successful, but I've found that every time I'm just like battling with myself to have a successful business, whatever that may be, when I'm mothering my kids, it never goes well. It never, ever goes well. And so I think that today we are so focused on creating success for ourselves that we've forgotten that motherhood is the biggest success in the whole entire world. These children are going to be impacting the next generations. They are the next generation. That is huge. We are raising the next generation. Like, let that sit in and really just marinate on your heart and your soul. And all of a sudden you will start to realize how incredibly important being a mother is and being fully 100% present in that. Now, again, I'm not saying don't ever have anything on the side, don't have a passion project. I actually think that's important too. But let's not let that get so high on our importance list that we aren't able to show up to be loving, present, understanding, empathetic, compassionate towards our children. And we're just putting so much weight on whether or not we've hit the success that we really want. So I hope that makes sense. But I think that that's something that we could do a lot better with today. The next thing is safe freedom. I shared a little bit about this in the very first podcast I did about old-fashioned parenting habits. Safe freedom is something that I guess I've kind of termed it this, where I like to create my home to be a space that's safe for my kids. And I had some questions on what does this actually look like? How do you actually do this? Is it just child-proofing? And kind of, that's true. It is child-proofing to an extent. But my kids' room is very, very simple. They just have usually magnet tiles or blocks out to play with, like literally 5 books and their blankets and stuffed animals and stuff. I learned this concept of less through the book Simplicity Parenting. Mentioned it so many times. I think that it is a book that every parent needs to read to really get grounded in how to create an environment that is going to nurture their child and help them to grow appropriately. And so, yeah, their room is very simple. There's no decorations. There's really not a lot to it. You know, they have their drawers, which I don't give them access to. But when it's time to get them dressed in the morning, I do let them pick their own clothes from the drawers. And so they don't have access to it all day, but they have access to it when they need it. I also have like their closet locked off so they can't go into the closet whenever they feel like it. And so what this does is it allows for them to play in their room. You know, again, I'm going to say another safety thing here. Make sure, you know, all your plugs have the little safety pluggy thingies. I can't think of what those called. But have all of those things done so that your child can play 100% safely in their room. They can jump off, you know, things. They can roll around. They can, you know, try things, explore, be independent without the fear of something happening. You know, anchor all of the furniture, like all of the things to make this 100% safe space. So you never have to feel or worry about your child, and your child will feel that, and then they will be able to start exploring their own independence, which they really need to be able to develop that independence. You know, at first, in the early days of a baby, you know, you've got that newborn to about 2, they need like 100% attachment. They need to create a secure attachment with us. And in order to do that, that means they have to be with us all the time to be regulated. And after around that 2-year mark, that's when they actually start to, what am I trying to say? Like branch out. They're more willing to try to be independent, but we have to have that safe, secure attachment for them to be able to go do that on their own. You know, it's not just a skill that's learned by leaving a child on their own. They will learn how to be on their own, but it's not well. It's not sustainable. I talk about my first daughter often and how different I did things. And with her, we did like a quiet time every day. And although like now we still do quiet time, we do it in a much different way, but quiet time was just her playing on her own. And, you know, in the beginning, I just thought, well, she'll just be in her room and she'll learn how to play on her own. You know, we started out with 10 minutes, and when she could sustain 10 minutes, then it'd be 20. Well, what I ended up feeling like after going to school and learning all the research that I've done recently, it's like that just taught her to cope in a way that's actually not healthy. She wasn't just playing because she was wanting to creatively play. She was playing just to keep herself busy because she wanted to be with me. And so it's actually a very different way of being alone. It's not this fully embodied, trusting, just being alone. And so, yeah, as I'm parenting now my second, I'm, you know, doing things much differently. And so it's really cool to see her have a lot of independence and a lot of skill at being independent. She's my one that'll just kind of run off. And for a while I thought it was a personality thing, but I'm like 100%, and it's the attachment. And so now I'm going back and I'm repairing that with my 4-year-old. And I've been doing the repair process for over 2 years. And I would say she's still not 100% there. She plays a lot by herself, but not nearly as much as her sister, you know, her younger sister. So yeah, focus on this whole self-freedom thing because I think that it will give the child the confidence to explore that in their own way. Okay, the next thing is I think moms today do way too much for their kids. I think that we are hand-holding way too much. Now, with that being said, I do think that we actually expect a little bit too much of little kids. I think that we often expect little kids to do a lot more than they're able to. But I think once we get to the older kids, like older being like 7+, I'm thinking or feeling, sensing that we aren't expecting enough. Are we teaching our child how to fold their clothes? Are we teaching our child how to cook? Are we teaching our child how to intentionally pick foods that are nourishing for our body? How to balance nourishing foods with foods that are enjoyable in a different way. they're not healthy. How can we balance this? And so I think that moms today really need to do a better job of stepping back, evaluating, can my child do this or won't my child do this? And if my child just can't do it right now, if my child's just kind of stuck in like, I can't do this, let me help them navigate that. Now, if my child won't do it, I need to teach them how to do things they don't always want to do. And that's like kind of where I'm at with my 4-year-old right now. She doesn't always want to clean her room. It's just not fun. So she won't. And when I realize it's a won't because she doesn't have a lot of toys to pick up, it's not overwhelming, I can help her navigate how to do something when she doesn't want to do it. All of these moments are teaching moments, and that's what I help parents to do, to learn and to figure out is how do I help my child to do this? And so much of this is through the modeling part of things, just expressing our inner world. There are just days where I don't want to do the dishes. And sometimes I just say it out loud. I don't want to do the dishes today. I am not in the mood. But you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to put on a podcast episode, and that's going to make me feel a little bit more encouraged to do it. And so now when my 4-year-old isn't wanting to clean up, she's like, maybe I'll put on my Tony box. Maybe that'll help me. And it's I wonder where she learned that from, just from me sharing my inner world. So I think that's something that we today can do better for children. The next thing that I don't think mamas today are doing well is I just don't think we're attuned to our children. I shared a lot about this, already, but I think we're so concerned about milestones, growth charts, where my child is on this scale, and we haven't realize that our child is unique and they have their own unique abilities and also disabilities, right? There are things that my 4-year-old just does amazingly and beautifully. And I'm also finding there are things that are just, they are not her strong suit. They are a challenge. And, she definitely is very active and all of that. Now, I could have said, we go back to the whole homeschooling thing. I could have said that, oh my gosh, she's such an active child. My husband has ADHD, and so I'm pretty sure that my oldest has ADHD, but she's never been diagnosed. So it's I often treat her as if she has ADHD. In that, I realize she needs a lot more nurturance in teaching her how to balance everything, how to, channel those moments where she has a lot of energy, she's very interested, or the moments she's super hyper focused, right? There are moments where she is hyper focused into reading and we just run with that. But there are other moments where she is just silly and goofy and we let that be a thing too, right? So I think we need to have a better attunement to our child. And how do we do this? We do this through observing, through watching, putting down our phones, not being so caught up in our own world and actually noticing what is going on in our child's world and not comparing them to the milestones and all the things. Let's look at their positive strengths. I think it's called The Strength Switch. I loved that book for a lot of reasons, but I think we don't focus today on the things our child is doing well, and we're constantly trying to pluck out the bad things. And what I've found is when I can really focus on the positive strengths that my child has, I can nurture the problem areas and kind of bring them up and help raise them up by utilizing their strengths. And so I think the only way that can be done is if we're more attuned with our child. So yeah, putting on the phone, not scrolling, doing all the things that us moms, we do because we're overwhelmed, we're tired, we're burned out, we're overstimulated. So why don't we just stimulate ourselves, right? And put put on a screen. So yeah, the next thing that I think we are getting wrong in today's society is mealtime. I think mealtime is often rushed and on the go and distracted, and we have become so intentional about mealtime, especially dinner time. Dinner time, we have a candle going, it's dim, we ask questions like my kids know we're going to ask about the highs and lows of the day, and often that leads to more conversation. I find my kids eat more. I find that we have a longer time at the table, and my kids get that connection, Phil, that they have so been needing and wanting, and I haven't even played with them. I think so often we think that connection is purely through play. And while that is a huge marker for our kids, like playing with them is a huge connection point, there are little moments throughout our day, such as mealtime, that we can make a huge connecting moment for our kids if we just take the time to step back, sit down, and actually enjoy these moments. So I encourage you to really think about mealtime and how you can make this way more intentional for you and your family. Okay, the very last thing, this is getting very long. So the very last thing is that I believe that everything is way too rushed. Many of you know I love a slow and intentional life. I love slow living. I'm not perfect at slow living. I'm definitely still learning, but I love this idea of not being rushed. I think that the older generations obviously did this so well because there wasn't as much to do. You know, I love that my grandfather was talking about, his farm and how, he really hardly ever had visitors, but when he did, so-and-so just stopped by. It wasn't like, hey, I'm going to be coming by in 20 minutes and then I got to head off here. Like, everything was slow. Everything was intentional. And there just wasn't as much to do and as much to grab our attention. And so if you are new to the whole slow living idea, there is tons of people here on YouTube that do that. I also did do a how to start slow living as a beginner, as a mom, and that video is also really helpful. I really love Madison Gray here on YouTube. She does a beautiful job at portraying slow living. Like, she's totally somebody that I look up to for this because I struggle to say always be in slow living, but to have good intentional times, just really embracing that lifestyle. So with that being said, this is going to wrap up today's episode. If you enjoyed this video, would you please give it a thumbs up? And if you are new here and you really enjoyed this content, I would encourage you to hit that subscribe button so that way you can continue receiving this kind of content, because I do believe that the more we surround ourselves with a different perspective, we really can become and step into who we were created to be as a mother. So anyway, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in the next episode.